Welcome back to the Startup Junkies podcast. Thank you for tuning in from wherever or however you're tuning in to us today. We appreciate it. Like, subscribe, download, all of those things that you're supposed to do. My name is Caleb. I am on the Startup Junkie team. I'm joined by my Startup Junkie co-hosts, Victoria Dickerson and Claudia Scott. How's it going? How are y'all?
Going well.
Doing great.
Yeah.
It's Friday, Junior.
Happy to be here.
Friday Junior.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
That makes it. That reframes it.
Yeah.
That's a marketing repositioning
exactly,
right
yeah.
there.
It's just like you could just, mentally already be in Friday,
Exactly.
like I typically try to do on Thursday.
Yeah. I do it on Wednesdays, so.
Smart. Let's do it on Tuesdays. Why stop at Wednesday?
Why have a week at all?
Start the week. Well, we are excited to be joined today by Erin Campbell. Erin is the co-founder of Gen Z Water, and she now is working as a fractional CMO, and she has got a bevy of experience in that space. And you may recognize her because she was on the podcast last year, representing Gen Z Water after they won the People's Choice at Startup Crawl. Plug for Startup Crawl, even though this will be out after. So forget that. Scratch that. It was great. It was fantastic. There were 5,000 people. Thanks for coming.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's really good to get back here, and it's bringing back all the Startup Crawl memories. So
hopefully good.
Yeah, great. You guys made me feel famous, so I'm not going to complain.
Yeah, that's the goal.
You are.
That's right.
You really are.
That's right. In my own head, I am at least. Yeah.
Same here.
Well, Erin, we normally start with, if Jeff was here, he would start with the origin story.
Yeah.
Genesis, skipping the baguettes, straight to who's Erin Campbell.
Oh, the origin story of me.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, not my brand. Oh, that goes okay. Yeah, that's a lot more intimidating and vulnerable. So I can go far back, but it's really interesting because I came from a very academic, scientific family, and so I think that did create a level of rigor and interest in data and analyzing a lot of information that really kind of directed answers. But there was always a part of me that loved the emotive side of it, the emotion, the less tangible side that gravitated me more towards communication or arts. And when I was young, there was not really a way that felt like those two areas could really reconcile. But I found really a happy place in the marketing side of the business, specifically the strategy side, where you want the data, you want the information to give you those indicators of where to go. But then we as human beings make decisions, whether we think that we are rational, we make them off of our heart and off of emotion. And that's where the creativity of developing the brand comes into place. And so I found this perfect meld of quantitative and qualitative, of mind and heart, that I really got to express on the marketing side of the business. Grew up at Saatchi and Saatchi X from a corporate standpoint, working for some really, Fortune 50 clients like Coca-Cola, Procter & Gamble, Spin Master, which was a toy company, and really learned the insight side, the strategy side, the data side more authentically and more deeply, and then the digital side. And so that's really how I the two halves, the left and the right brain, really kind of came to clicked into clarity and really helped me understand kind of what is the balance that I truly love and how I became who I am today. Was that enough of an origin story
That's
for
awesome.
you?
Yeah.
That's really
fantastic.
Cool. And so from your love for that, you worked at Saatchi & Saatchi, and so then how did Gen Z Water come into play? What was the timeline?
Yeah, so it was a really crazy timeline. And I loved my time at Saatchi, but it is a big organization. You start, when you grow in your career, it becomes more about negotiating kind of politics and procedures and less about the actual work. Yes. And I love the work. I love working on innovation with passionate people, like insatiable curiosity, and working with people who just are never satisfied with the information that they know. So I knew that there was something else that I wanted to do, just didn't know what. I had this crazy connection that said, hey, we have this opportunity to work in this particular category and we need a marketing co-founder. Would you be interested? And of course, we all know the end of the story now, that horrible category at first was water. We say, how can you get a worse category than paper plates or paper napkins than water? I mean, it was like, there's no innovation. This is commoditized. It's, do we even really need it? It's environmentally creating problems within our world. And so at first it was just no, no, no. But then afterwards you sit and think and you're like, okay, but what if we can do it differently? What if we can take all these norms that other brands have done, the playbook that they all seem to follow, and instead feel like we have to play that same playbook? What if we do something different? And is there a right to win in that difference? And then that became really exciting. And when else is a Northwest Arkansas marketing girl going to have a chance to co-found a CPG brand? It felt like a Cinderella story. So I had to say yes. But that so happened I turned in my notice at Saatchi and we immediately went into lockdown. So not only how terrifying to start a CPG brand, never having done it before, on top of the world has completely changed and shut down. So there was a lot of, are you sure you want to do this? Are you sure you don't want to at least stay with something that you know? But it actually was just a really great opportunity to use that time of the pandemic to really put our heads down and just be hungry learners. We just learned everything about the water category, all of our predecessors, and collected all the insights and all the data that then intentionally allowed us to inform the move forward, the go forward strategy in building the brand.
Very cool. So what's something just high level about water that the average person wouldn't know?
Okay, well, if you really begin to look at brand after brand after brand, there's a very consistent brand story that gets told, or brand imagery formula. And it's kind of what we call it the 3 Fs, that you have to be hyper fit to drink our water. So think about your yogis in their two-piece sets, striking the perfect warrior 2 pose, or the triathlete that just got off of riding his bike. You have to be super famous. So think of all the endorsements with Jennifer Aniston, with The Rock, or you have to be filthy rich. So think about Evian or Fiji, how they are using their water brand to be associated with as an accessory, as a designer accessory that elevates your class.
Yeah.
Which is, when you really start to unpack it, those are very aspirational, very elitist places to be. And you juxtapose that with that water's the foundation of life.
Yeah.
Everybody needs water to live.
Yes.
And so that, or it's really boring. It's like Dasani, or, it's just like there's no personality to it. So
Dasani's sponsoring this.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I love Dasani water. Me too. You're not boring at all. It's incredibly riveting branding. Hire me, please.
Scratch that.
So it was very interesting. And then also it was so focused, which seems somewhat obvious. It was so focused on the liquid. Like, what's the pH? Where was this sourced? When the reality is 75% of us are actually dehydrated. So there's another stat for you. Even though the water is a enormous category, we're spending millions of dollars on it, billions of dollars on it, but we're still dehydrated. So really, water is water. We just all need to drink more water.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, who cares if it's 7.4 pH, 9.1 pH, if it's alkaline or acidic?
I think it's interesting. So you mentioned create a new brand could potentially be worse for the environment. So how are y'all different?
Yeah, that is a great point, because that was one of my non-negotiables. I personally, I just couldn't imagine adding to the plastic pollution problem. So I said, if we're going to do this, we have to think outside the normal category box from a packaging and a kind of consumption and distribution.
I think especially like right now, it's a big push for don't buy water bottles at all. Like use your reusable, use your Stanley. So
absolutely.
That's so interesting.
And that's the generation we targeted. I mean, 8 out of 10 use their reusable water bottle. It's actually the most common lost and found item in a college campus. Yes. And it's also an extension of this generation, Gen Z generation. It's a personality. If you carry a Stanley, you are different than if you carry a Hydro Flask, then a Nalgene. And that immediately creates these cohorts of people that you can begin to do some stereotypes on. So your question, I knew we did not want to be in plastic, because there's so much of the plastic problem, and really actually the newest studies show that only 5% of plastic is actually recycled, even if you put it in your recycling bin. So we have a massive problem. So we went in knowing we had to solve that problem, but not necessarily with any preconceived thoughts of what substrate we were going to be bottled in. So we looked at Tetra Pak, we looked at glass, but we actually came down to aluminum. But what's really great about aluminum, 75% of aluminum that has been produced is actually still in the marketplace today, and it does not have, it's circular. So whereas even if plastic is recycled, it can only be recycled 1 or 2 times before it's degraded to where it's unusable. Aluminum is endless, is infinite. And it takes about 60 days from the moment you put it in a recycling bin to where it can be reformed, used with post-consumer recycling content, and back on the shelf. But the great thing about aluminum, so that was one thing.
That's super fast.
Yes.
It's a 60-day turnaround.
We now have a better, more reliable substrate that is actually recycled because it has monetary value. So then the recycling centers are financially incentivized to recycle it, whereas it's cheaper to make a bottle out of virgin plastic versus recycling plastic. But we elevated it beyond just the aluminum to actually positioning it as a blurred or hybrid consumable durable or durable consumable. So don't just buy our water one time, drink it, throw it in the recycling bin, and then buy another bottle. Refill it, reuse it. Just like the same behavior you're using right now with your Hydro Flask, do it with this bottle. It can be safe for the dishwasher up to 8 times. You can reuse it. It's durable enough, but it's not so durable that it is going to last you indefinitely. But guess what? It has a better end of life than your Stanley or your Hydro Flask that it uses stainless steel that is actually really difficult to process. So it was really unarming for people. And we're like, yeah, reuse it. You don't have to buy our water again. Fill it up with your water. And then guess what? If you lose it, you're not out $30 in replacing a new Hydro Flask. And hopefully someone's going to chuck it into the recycling bin because they're used to the aluminum soda can kind of procedure.
It's easy in the mind. And I think like for me, when I have a regular water bottle, like a plastic one, and I refill it just like one time, it gives me like a gross feeling.
Right.
You're
So
full
I think
of microplastics.
I'm like, and I even see it. I'm like, that does not look good. So, and I do want to reuse it because I feel bad buying it. So I think that's so important.
Exactly. Yeah.
Talk a little bit about you mentioned identifying this kind of this area that needed disrupting. Tell us a little bit about the opportunity around kind of the customer you identified and kind of that lane that y'all found there.
Yeah, super fun. So one of the things I did have the opportunity to do at Saatchi was really become an expert on generational insights, really deeply and intimately knowing the millennial shopper or consumer, who at the time was, the hottest thing everyone was trying to decode. And then along comes an even more cryptic generation of Gen Z. But we really partnered with P&G and Walmart and really helped them understand these newer consumers. So I had that foundational base. And then with the insights and the data and the research that we did during the pandemic, it was incredibly clear that fit, filthy rich, famous brand imagery was a huge disconnect from the value system of the Gen Z generation, much more in line with the aspirational millennial generation. So that is where we looked at what all the other brands were doing, what was their brand imagery, who were their targets, what was their brand archetype, and where were the big fat holes and where was the white space. And so we said, listen, water doesn't need to be so boring to drink. It doesn't need to be so bad for the environment. And nobody is at the time talking really directly to Gen Z, and Gen Z is a 180 compared to the other consumer cohorts that are out there. And this was when liquid death was incredibly nascent. And so it was just a blaring opportunity. And so we knew that no one had really successfully captured that consumer group yet.
And I'm fascinated by the branding. It's, Gen Z, so it's in the name, but the branding is so 90s. Yes. And Victoria and I were just talking about this earlier. It's so interesting to me. It's targeting a generation that wasn't there.
Right. Right.
So that's just fascinating to me.
Yeah. And I'd actually, it works on multiple levels. I'm not going to assume whether you guys are Gen Z. You look very young, so you might be Gen Z. But there's so many trends for retro and for Y2K fashion. 90s and early 2000s is all coming in. But if you really peel back the layers and understand kind of the why, there's a much deeper, very emotional reason and why that generation likes retro. Because the world is incredibly chaotic right now, incredibly stressful, global pandemic, political strife, a climate that, we have a lot of question marks around. So the regression of a perceived simpler time acts as an escape, as a way to deal with the stress of every day and kind of harken back to a more simpler time. But what I love about kind of the digital clutter, the GeoCities, the Y2K aesthetic, whatever you kind of want to look at, is it is attractive to a generation that didn't live it, but it also is reminiscent of a generation who did. So in this weird way, we call ourselves Gen Z, but there's a unifying factor with the imagery that really is kind of like, okay, really, is water just for a specific generation? No, it's for a group of people who like water and get the joke and kind of appreciate the humor.
Yeah, because I'm not Gen Z, but I absolutely appreciate the 90s like nostalgia. I can be on Google. The other day I was looking at 90s toys for whatever reason. I'd watched that Beanie Baby movie and I'm just like, there's that sense of like longing for, or I guess like, nostalgia for that simpler time. So it's like, I'm not Gen Z, but I'll buy this water because it does remind me of that.
And I'm right in the middle of like being either, like I could be I can be millennial. I'm a millennial, but I could, if just a year.
You're a cusper.
Be a Gen Z. So how well has the product placed on millennials? So people that are, it's not in the name, but they might feel same as Caleb.
Yeah, I think the real truth is it's polarizing. It's polarizing across the board. And I don't hate that. If it wasn't polarizing, then we're not pushing boundaries. We are not innovative enough. We have not taken enough risks. And when you're in such a saturated category, that is the biggest risk you could take by not differentiating yourself. So, but there is a real strong kind of millennial, this sarcastic, ironic humor where they are tired of the overly kind of conspicuous consumption, unattainable aesthetics that can appreciate the joke. And even you get to the boomer side, and we had a great quote that says, "Oh, I am totally buying this. I am going to drink it in front of my grandkids and mock them for being Gen Z."
Yeah, I've had people at work that do that. So I feel like that would be such an interesting part of the customer
people
base.
At work.
Well, not this work, but like I've worked with people that are boomers, and they're like they find it so funny to just joke about it. So everything that they can do is like a gag, like office joke, they will. So I think that's an interesting like customer base.
Well, and not beating around the fact that millennials, Gen Z appreciate a good bit, that they appreciate the humor, that everybody needs to drink water. I'm 1996, so I'm probably Gen Z, probably the oldest of Gen Z.
You are.
And I appreciate the joke. I can appreciate that you're not telling me to be that fit, affluent, like rich type of person that would be the Serena Williams drinking the Gatorade or drinking the water. It's like, okay, I can just drink water because it's good for the environment and the art is cool. And you're just telling me straight up that, this is Gen Z water, you're Gen Z, drink it. And I can appreciate that that's funny. And so hit the nail on the head for me.
I want to be cool with it. I want the Gen Zs to like me, so I would buy it for that. I'm 94, so I'm like really, I have like identity crisis. So I'm a millennial, but I want Gen Zs. Like my friends, most of them are Gen Zs. So I was like, can you pretend I'm cool? Like I'll do anything you want.
And we did get a lot of that. Like, oh, does this make me Gen Z? If I drink this, is it going to make me look younger? And so you can very much kind of play along with the bit. The bit kind of delivers itself and continues to unravel if people will be willingly participate.
Yeah, and I think the first time that I saw your product, it was the tagline, correct me if I'm wrong, transparent, flavorless liquid.
Yeah, flavorless, transparent liquid.
And I thought that was so funny. And I loved it, and it stuck in my head.
Well, like there's all these products, like all these waters, all this like bubbly waters. And the descriptions I'm like, so is this water? Like I'll go to just buy a water bottle. I'm like, hold on, this one has what? This one nutrients and ingredients.
Yes.
It's just water.
Yes.
Like I just want to go buy a water, and you're giving me a product with like such a fancy description that I'm not sure what I'm buying.
100%.
I bought one in an aluminum can, and I could have sworn it was water. I wanted water, sparkling water. I'm like, make it easy. Like give me no room for error.
That's exactly what we took, kind of this brutalistic, overly direct or like hyper direct, almost to the point where you're like, why has no one thought of flavorless, transparent liquid before?
That's what it is.
Exactly. But what was so interesting, it was so counter what the typical beverage industry does, to very much your point. And one of my favorite pieces is we would be at trade shows and you'd get, your skeptical merchants or buyers or investors or even, partner brands. It usually was of the older generation type. And the first thing, they try to catch you. The first thing they do is like, well, what's different about your water? And we would disarm them by doing the absolute thing nobody else would do. We're like, nothing. Nothing is different about our water.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Or we're the first functional beverage, because guess what? You can't function without water. Or we come from the same place as Fiji, planet Earth. Like just taking these typical category cues that everyone seems to feel like they have to participate in them and doing the complete opposite.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I like about, entrepreneurs in general have to be risky and they have to put themselves out there. And so I just want to say that that's a testament to you and your team, that you did put yourself out there, that you were risky, and it paid off because it was done so well. And so I just think that that's a great testament of being a risky entrepreneur and doing it well.
Victoria, I want to further encourage that sentiment, because we were going up, and as any other startup, you were going to have significant competitors who have more money, competitors who have more momentum than you, competitors who have figured out problems that maybe you have yet to experience. The one very obvious benefit you have as a startup is your risk tolerance. Mm-hmm. And so we understood I didn't have millions of dollars like Smart Water did, but we had agility, we had risk tolerance. So even when we started going into the brand exploration, it was a core tenet of our brand strategy. Make it fun, make it sustainable, go after Gen Z, but bring something. Let's think of something that would get us fired if we worked in the halls of Coke.
I love that.
So it was incredibly intentional, and that was always our gut check. If Coke would have done this, no, we're doing something else. Mm-hmm. So
that's very cool.
Lean into that risk, because it is scary, but it is one of your core benefits being a startup. Yeah. Lean and mean.
Absolutely.
And I'm not a marketing expert at all, but I feel like you developed it to perfection. I feel like it's so interesting. Like there's so many different areas that you can look at it. You can look at the retro part. You can look at the name. You can look at the simplicity of it. And it all just lands so well from a marketing. I think as a consumer that doesn't have marketing experience, that's what I would be like. This is perfect marketing. This is what I want.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate that. And I would also tell you that it landed so well because I feel like we did it with such intention. There is a story, there's a reason, there is a strategy, there's a data point, there's an insight behind every decision that we made. So that's also, to that risk point, they're informed and they're educated risks. So they're not just careless, they're very calculated. And we made sure that we had a reasonably data-informed argument that would justify that risk. So there is a balance, but I see so many other entrepreneurs and they are so passionate about their idea, and that is a key ingredient. But there's also blinders that happen and I think, your first bit you need to know all of your competitors. You need to know every bit of the category that you can, not just from the consumer forward marketing side, but from behind the scenes on the business side. Because we don't have hundreds of thousands of dollars to buy IRI or Nielsen, but you have Google and you have social media pages and website pages and their annual reports. And you can learn so much from just being the person who digs a little bit deeper, who digs a little bit longer, and then using that to inform your go forward strategy.
Mm. Jeff mentions something all the time too when he's on the podcast about, he says he's unemployable because he's a serial entrepreneur, and as a result, he's got that risk tolerance. And then you mentioned earlier just kind of the politics of larger companies and the inability to kind of have autonomy to take a risk and explore. So entrepreneurs, in a sense, can become unemployable in that sense, to where they just kind of crave that.
But I think the irony happens though when the larger companies who are not risk tolerant, who innovation is more iterative than transformative. It's more bureaucratic than truly around solving a problem. But they realize that they are out of time, and they may have a lot of money, but especially this new consumer base is going to be more questioning on their kind of late capitalistic strategies and approaches. And so what they are needing, these larger CPG brands, larger, more mature companies are looking at startups to be their key innovation and strategic development lever.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I would be curious, as years pass, as we get further from COVID proper, seeing how the risk management, because everybody had to take risks. And that was everybody, whether you wanted to or not, was forced to pivot. And so I have a background in summer camp. And so I was working at a summer camp whenever COVID happened. And the amount of risks and new strategy and new ideas that came out of that, I think was supremely beneficial to that organization. And so I'd be curious, as years passed, how these traditional companies that aren't used to risk management had to use that for COVID and what the payoff was.
Yeah, that is a really interesting point. I love that perspective. And then I think even with the constant kind of swirl and impending language of a potential recession, does that make you go back to what you think you know and bring you closer into the center? So it's like we're having these pendulum swings, and it is going to be really interesting. But I do think as long as we keep innovating on an entrepreneur side, they're going to feel the pressure, and they're going to feel the dollar share moving from them, which that's where the pressure really comes to these startups. And as long as we keep doing our job of innovating and disrupting and thinking differently, then they're going to be forced to do it one way or the other, whether that's build, borrowed, or buy.
Absolutely. Entrepreneurs are leading the way.
That's right. That's right.
And so Gen Z Water was acquired.
Yeah.
Tell us a little about that process, and was that the ultimate goal?
Yeah.
Kind of, in that process?
Yeah. So it was. We knew from the very beginning, I love the 0 to 1. I love building something from a blank sheet of paper, where all problems are theoretical and you get to kind of just dream and vision and then see if it can come to life. We knew that it was going to take millions and millions and millions of dollars to scale this brand, specifically around building a distribution and sales infrastructure that many brands had already built. We also, myself and my other two co-founders, came from more sophisticated and mature CPG backgrounds. We inherently understood that innovation model is broken, and that those large CPG companies are looking for cues from the smaller disruptors, and that we could be really thoughtful and intentional about using our brand to help drive that disruption strategy, that R&D strategy forward for these brands. So, and we didn't want to raise those millions of dollars. I didn't want to scale. And so we actively kind of packaged it up as a forward-thinking vision of a way to develop a current brand's portfolio. And it took a right profile of a brand, probably was more middle-sized brand, a brand that understood they were buying a proven vision, a proven model, but not necessarily a scaled model, and a company that was mature enough that had the infrastructure that we would have had to go raise against. And we were lucky to find that exact profile in a partner with Langer's Juice. And they are a family-owned juice company out of California. They are fantastic operators. They have a very sophisticated distribution network. They have a deep and well-oiled sales team, but they are selling mostly commodities, which is affordable juice. And that is not the currency that we exchange products on anymore. We are buying higher order benefits. We're not buying the functional liquid. We're not buying the functional water. You're buying the sustainability and the joke and the levity of it. But they understood they had that gap. And so they bought us for the proven innovation. So when I say proven, we sold on vision, but we had the credentials to back it up. So we had a proven sales case study. We had gotten regional approval in Target. So the large retailer profile had accepted us. And then we had great consumer validation through our social engagement. So we said, you're not just buying a promise, you're buying an idea that has been validated in multiple different territories. So they bought us for the innovation, they bought us for the brand, they bought us for the sustainability, and then they were going to overlay their operating mature infrastructure to help go scale.
I think it's important to note, just in that process of building to sale, because I feel like sometimes entrepreneurs, when they're building something, they're just kind of plugging and going versus, having, necessarily looking beyond that point of, their MVP or whatever it is, and like building with the intentionality of, spinning it off, getting acquired, and just kind of what it takes to kind of prepare for that.
Right.
I feel like there's a whole process that most people don't actually think about.
Yeah, and I think we accidentally fell into that. I think because we came from more mature CPG companies, we brought that in with us. And so that was always kind of, we were planning with the end in sight. This wasn't our passion project. It wasn't our baby. We ran it from a really objective, business-informed way. So I don't know if that it makes us somewhat accidental entrepreneurs, but it's really this great blend of kind of corporate experience with the kind of startup blank sheet of paper, dreamer side in us.
I think like ideal entrepreneur, not accident.
That is, it is the ideal cross of having that mentality, risk, but also have the experience and the data and how to acquire it too. Because I think that's a lot. You did so much of just the research side, which I think it's incredible.
And that's probably laid the foundation for what you're doing now. So tell us more about what you're doing now.
Yeah. So I this was the plan to sell, but wasn't necessarily a plan after we sold what that was going to look like. So when all of a sudden Gen Z was no longer my box to fit in, it was I'll say fun. It was fun determining what my next box was going to be. But it definitely, and I don't know if I figured that out, but I definitely know I love partnering with very young and fresh entrepreneurs. I love that 0 to 1 phase. I love kind of solving some of those initial problems. So I am, for the time being, working as a fractional CMO, strategic marketing consultant for several entrepreneurs here locally as well as across the nation, and really helping them build their strategy and asking those vision forward, those end in sight questions so we can start to build in some of those practices, tactics that really can help them realize what their desired legacy is.
That's really cool.
Does that scratch your entrepreneurial itch? Or are you kind of interested in kind of jumping both feet back into something?
I'm not sure if I'm quite ready for that. Yeah. I like it that I can lay my head down at night and at the end of the day, it's somebody else's problem.
That's the world.
Yeah. I mean, I can definitely see, I know myself well enough that I like innovation. I like being part of the change. I like being within proximity of the change. So I don't know how long this will scratch the itch. And of course, as every great entrepreneur, you have endless ideas of what can be done, what should be done, what you can do better. But right now, I really am having fun just helping facilitate other people's dreams and other people's step change ideas. And the work-life balance is really nice right now too.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Awesome. Well, our land the plane question that we ask every podcast guest is, if you had the opportunity to hop in your time machine and go back, not necessarily before Gen Z, maybe before Saatchi, and give your younger self advice, what would that advice be?
Yeah, this is a good question, and it's not the first time I've been asked, so I've gotten to contemplate this. And ironically enough, the biggest advice I would give her was to take more risks. It took me, close to 40 years old to take some bigger risks, and were some of it painful? Yes. But did I learn so much? And just fast forward my not only professional, but definitely my personal, emotional, spiritual development just went full throttle. So it would be to take risks. But I say that with some hesitation because I firmly believe every iterative step, every kind of breaking down the people pleasing, breaking down the right and the wrong kind of bifurcation territories that I lived in before, every kind of block that I took away systematically turned me into who I was today and has made me the entrepreneur that I can be today. So I don't know if the younger self would have been ready to hear just take risks. I think she had to go through the whole process to get to where I am today.
It's really good feedback.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's been a while, but we had a guest one time that said, I wouldn't tell myself anything.
That's
because
what
it
I was
wouldn't
thinking.
matter.
It just,
because I need to go through that process. And if I knew, for him specifically, if I knew how difficult it would be to build and launch what I was building and launching, I would probably be in a cubicle if I gave myself that advice.
Yeah. I always say I think there's two really good qualities that an entrepreneur has to have. You have to have a level of arrogance. You have to have a level of, I can do this better than anyone else. I'd say that's 49%, but then 51% you have to be naive. You have to not know how tough it is going to be moving in. And it's that healthy balance of, I can do it and I don't know what is coming ahead of me, that allows you to be a really strong entrepreneur. And I just say that naivety, just a couple percent more, so we don't let our ego and arrogance to overly drive the ship.
Makes sense.
Yeah. Well, where can our listeners, viewers connect with you, learn more about what you're doing now?
Yeah, absolutely. LinkedIn is the best place. So Erin Campbell, you can find me there. I'd love for, even though it's no longer in my full possession, please check out Gen Z at drinkgenz.com. I guarantee, if nothing else, you will be entertained by the website.
And I can confirm that. Well, thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you. This was a real pleasure. You guys asked some really thoughtful questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Erin.
Thanks.
Ecosystem builders, entrepreneurs, chambers of commerce, mayors, if you're interested in taking your economic future into your own hands, we've got a book that can help you. Creating Startup Junkies, Building Sustainable Venture Ecosystems in Unexpected Places is the guide. It's a little bit inspiration. It's a little bit toolkit. What it will allow you to do is take your economic future into your own hands and build a sustainable small business, innovation, and entrepreneurial ecosystem in your backyard. If you'd like to hear more, check out creatingstartupjunkies.com. The Startup Junkie podcast reaches over 100 countries and has had over 100,000 downloads. If you're interested in reaching some of the most motivated and engaged innovators and entrepreneurs on a worldwide basis,